last
I
week.
didn't forget my.
He was a little tardy.
Patrick, I would note that 7 is a quorum, so the two of us could go wait for him at Celtic Fox.
So many people here.
No.
Hey, Patrick.
How are you?
Good.
See that survey? Yes. Does it typically have every item?
No, I've never seen that before.
No.
That's right. No problem.
It's on my desk.
It doesn't count as being on time if you didn't have your time.
That's not fair.
Defense melted it.
No, it's actually on my desk. All right. Because I had a couple calls, but that's actually better.
Makes John.
It's a little bit harder.
Here we go, folks.
Good evening and welcome to the City of Topeka Planning Commission meeting. We are a commission appointed by the mayor and city council to plan for the orderly growth and development of the community, to hold public hearings and to make recommendations to the city council on planning items. Please note that the city council rules state that the public hearings for planning cases shall be conducted solely by the planning commission. No additional public hearings will be conducted by the city council. Tonight's cases are tentatively scheduled to be heard by the City Council next month. Agendas can be found at topeka.org. Many of tonight's cases involve public hearings. For those cases, the procedures will be as follows. First, the Planning Department staff will summarize the case. Next, we will hear from the applicant or the representative. Then we will receive public testimony. Public comments should be addressed solely to the chair and are limited to 4 minutes. Chris, please take the roll.
Mr. Armstrong?
Here.
Ms. Messina?
Here.
Ms. Cavazos?
Here.
Mr. Gales?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Ms. Jordan?
Here.
Mr. Kennard?
Here.
Ms. Ringler?
Here.
Mr. Woods?
Here.
We have 9 in a quorum.
Thank you. Next on the list is approval of the minutes. I have a motion in that regard.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Cut them off guard.
Second.
We have a second. All right. Approval of the minutes is, we have a motion and a second. Just please take the vote.
Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Ms. Messina?
Aye.
Ms. Cavazos?
Aye.
Mr. Gales?
Aye.
Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
Aye.
Mr. Kennard?
Abstain?
Ms. Ringler?
Aye.
Mr. Woods?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0 with 1 abstaining.
Right, Mr. Finder, are there any communications to the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chair. First, on the items that were recommended last month, the JADO rezoning at Southeast 21st in Indiana did pass the governing body unanimously last month. The Wheatfield PUD has been scheduled for September 12th, so that has not been acted on yet, just to keep you in the loop. My other communications are sad ones today. We never like moments like this where we have to say goodbye, but it also gives us a chance to recognize the service of 2 very valued members of this body who will be missed. And 2 of the more inquisitive ones, I might say. So they will definitely be missed even more. Commissioner Woods and Commissioner Gales will have their final performance tonight, so thank you. Both of you guys, I think, broke new ground in your own way. You were part of the Planning Commission that adopted the Land Use and Growth Management Plan, which is arguably our most significant policy document that this body's ever put forth. And there's only 2 of you left that adopted that, so don't go anywhere. But before you get to go back to your real jobs and do the great things you've been doing, just have a couple gifts, some parting gifts, and some more kind words. First, Commissioner Woods, you have served 1 term since August 2014 through August of 17. You served as vice chair last year through 2016. And I think you probably you broke your own ground by being probably the first sitting school board president on this board. And we can't thank you enough for bringing your...
People were smarter.
I have no idea why, but, so that says so much. We can't thank you enough for your service and bringing your talents and insights to us. So on behalf of Mayor Wolgast and all of us, we want to thank you for your outstanding service to the citizens of Topeka, and you can pick up your parting gift after the meeting if that's okay. I will take care of this. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gales. Mr. Gales served an unprecedented, well, actually, you've been serving since September 2011, so that's quite a long time. 8 years, 2 terms. 4 of those have been in leadership position, 2 years as a vice chair, 2 years as a chair. That's pretty unprecedented at this level. You're a steady hand through a few rough waters, so that is even more valued to us to bring your, particularly your perspective and insights and vision as a design professional to this body, which we really need on more than one occasion. So thank you for that. So on behalf of Mayor Wolgast, again, and all of us, and we want to thank you for your amazing service to the citizens of Topeka, and we will keep this for you for afterwards. So
Thank you.
Thank you both, Commissioner Woods and Gales.
Thank you.
That concludes my comments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Finder. I would like to add my thanks to both these gentlemen. You've both been here since I've been here, and I've appreciated your inquisitive nature, as it was stated, and outspokenness that is something we're definitely going to miss. With no other communications to the commission, the only other thing I would like to thank Ms. Cavazos for stepping in and running the meeting last month in my absence. Next, do any commissioners have a declaration of conflict of interest or ex parte communication regarding the matters on the docket tonight? All right, seeing none, it's time to go to public hearing on item 1, PUD 1703 by Frank Mead. And let's see, Mr. Nunabel's going to be presenting.
Good evening, Commissioners. Yes, before you is case PUD 1703, entitled Lake Shawnee Storage Planned Unit Development Master Plan. Specifically requested is amending the district zoning classification of the subject property from R1 single-family dwelling district to PUD planned unit development with I1, C4, and O and I1 use groups. Applicant, Mr. Frank Mead, property owner, Marcia E. Herman Living Trust. The 10.7-acre site is located at the northeast corner of Southeast 29th Street and Southeast Wittenberg Road. Staff is recommending disapproval of the proposed PUD master plan. The PUD master plan provides for a mix of self-storage types 1 and 2, including recreational vehicle storage and office use, to be developed in 5 phases. The city zoning code does include distinctions between self-service storage facility types, with self-storage type 1 being storage that has only indoor access via internal hallways, while self-storage type 2 includes individual units that have their own exterior access, resulting in multiple doors or entryways on the external facade of the building. The 10.7-acre site consists of vacant land that is intermittently used for agricultural production on approximately 7 acres, with 2.5 acres of the site being wooded. The Lake Shawnee Dam is located immediately south of the property, with Lake Shawnee being a multiple-use recreation area serving the city, county, and region. Adjacent areas to the north and east consist of single-family residential neighborhoods, with commercial uses located further to the east, approximately 1/3 mile along 29th Street. A convenience store is located approximately 650 feet west of the site, with single-family residential development located further west along 29th Street as well. As is the case with most PUDs, the master plan addresses various elements such as utilities, circulation, parking, traffic, buildings, signage, and landscaping. All utilities to be underground with sanitary sewer and water service to be provided by the city of Topeka. The property owner applicant will be connecting directly to the sanitary sewer main to the north. The PUD master plan also provides for internal circulation for vehicles and pedestrians, including 2 points of vehicular access, one located on 29th Street and another on Wittenberg Road. The PUD provides for a total of 17 buildings. Self-storage type 2, indoor storage with outdoor access, 5 buildings. Self-storage type 2, also for covered storage of boats and recreational vehicles, 4 buildings. Self-storage type 1, climate-controlled interior entry, 3 buildings. Office buildings will be comprised of 5 separate buildings. Project phasing provides for construction of 3 storage buildings and 1 office building in 2017, with additional storage and office buildings completed in phases 2 through 5 through the year 2026. The PUD master plan does include a landscape plan exhibit that provides for enhanced landscaping, primarily in the form of buffers located along Wittenberg Road and Southeast 29th Street. Most of the wooded portions of the site will remain as undisturbed stream buffer areas. The PUD master plan does establish development standards and guidelines that are more restrictive than the standards that would normally apply to zoning districts without a planned unit development. For example, General Note number 13 strictly prohibits all outdoor storage. The project applicant did hold a neighborhood information meeting, as is always required. Approximately 38 attendees attended that meeting, and many did express concerns about the project. The city, as it always does with proposed zone changes, does receive comments from other city departments, numerous city departments and external agencies. The adjacent segments of Wittenberg and Southeast 29th Streets being located within Shawnee County, staff did receive a memorandum from Shawnee County Department of Public Works dated August 9th. A particular note where they're indicating that they would not allow for an access onto 29th Street until such time as 29th Street is improved, which is anticipated to be in 2019. And these improvements will include 5-lane sections with a center turn lane, along with a sidewalk on the north side and a multiple-use path on the south side. Staff did complete an analysis of the proposed project utilizing 7 primary factors, or golden factors as they're referred to. Staff have concluded that the proposed PUD master plan would entitle development that is not compatible with the general character of the neighborhood and may degrade the value of Lake Shawnee as a recreation destination enjoyed by city and county residents. This is highlighted by the PUD including 65,000 square feet, or 55% of development in the form of type 2 storage. The potentially detrimental impact of the distribution of land uses, which is heavily weighted toward light industrial use type, is aggregated by the proposed phasing. Phase 1 and 2 together consist of approximately 28,000 square feet of self-storage type 1 and 6,800 square feet of office use. The master plan does include conditions to promote visual quality through physical design. In particular, General Notes 15 through 18 address the design of fences, exterior materials, and requires that buildings immediately adjacent to public roadways include variation in materials, window openings, and other forms of design articulation. However, the PUD master plan does not include exterior elevations. And without having these elevations, there's difficulty in ensuring that visually unappealing development that will not negatively affect the character of Lake Shawnee occurs. The Topeka Land Use and Growth Management Plan 2040 contains policies related to growth management and future land use. Generally speaking, growth management policies of the plan are supportive of projects that develop within Tier 1, that is, existing city limits, as with this proposal. However, that policy also goes on to state that projects should promote a range of uses to fit within the overall character of the area. And staff again concludes that due to the primarily commercial industrial nature of the uses, the proposed project does not fit within the overall character of the area. Additionally, the future land use map within the 2040 plan designates the subject property as urban, suburban, low-density residential. These areas are predominantly characterized by a cohesive display of single and two-family residences. The proposal being a commercial industrial use is not supported by an urban, suburban, low-density residential designation. Based upon the findings and analysis, planning staff does recommend disapproval of the Lake Shawnee Storage PUD Master Plan because of its inclusion of self-service storage type 2, a lack of assurance of visually appealing design consistent with the character of the area, and inconsistency with the Topeka Land Use and Growth Management Plan 2040. Should the Planning Commission decide to recommend approval to the governing board, staff would further recommend that approval be consistent, subject to specific conditions outlined in the staff report, and upon submittal of a revised master plan and exterior building elevations representative of each use for review by the Planning Commission at a future meeting. And this concludes staff's presentation. And staff's available to answer questions you may have.
Commissioners, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Nunabel?
I do have a question for you, Mr. Chairman, if I can add. Thank you.
Please.
In your staff recommendations, clearly you preface them with your reminder of the disapproval, but then you indicate that should we recommend approval, that at a minimum the following items be considered, and you have a total of 17 of them. I'm assuming you consider those to be your minimal expectations for worthiness of further consideration. I did note on here that I don't see any further elaboration on the design character pertaining to the properties. You had made a note of talking about that they give some brief reference, if I may, Commissioner, item 15, let's see here, 16, 17, and 18. There's nothing in here talking about the percentages of materials or anything like that, and so you don't reference any further qualifications for any of the exterior appearances within the PUD. I guess that you're willing to leave those requirements as they are in your minimal improvement requirements that you state here. I'm trying to pick your brain a little bit here on why that you even made a point of pointing that out, yet you didn't further address what your expectations would be for it to be approved.
Yes, Commissioner Gales, a important aspect would be including in any revised PUD the building elevations, which would allow staff and the applicant to work through various design issues, hopefully.
In lieu of a more definitive verbal description of design criteria.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I do ask my question based on past precedent. I have familiarity with Aquarian Retail, and it had a very, the same criteria with aesthetics was applied to that, and I know there were elevations of the structures that had to be provided in, as well as percentages of materials and other things. So I'm asking, trying to get a better understanding, what is that benchmark? If you weren't happy with this, what is that benchmark? You're telling me an elevation was something more definitive design.
The major concern, Commissioner, being the prospect of self-storage, especially self-storage type 2 with multiple openings, being this industrial commercial look.
Understood.
That there are ways of mitigating for that.
Yeah.
And in fact, subsequent to completing the staff report, the applicant did provide some concepts of building elevations, some of which were well done, and especially for the type of facility it is. But yes, just being able to assure the city of what these elevations, these building facades will look like would remove so much uncertainty.
Okay, so back to my question, I guess. I was trying to better understand some time and effort, and I'm crediting you of that, went into
The graphic, you would see that it is in a yellow color for residential. I wouldn't so much take our presentation and our analysis to mean that's what we think it necessarily should be, residential. We do think there are aspects of non-residential development that work here. So it's more that this has there is a mixed-use node to the west of Wittenberg where there's some commercial, and that implies that implies neighborhood, commercial, office, more intensive residential, or some combination of all of that. It doesn't imply necessarily industrial or heavy intensive commercial. So I think at the bottom line is that's where it sort of fell or failed the test, if you will, that we do realize there probably needs to be a update to the land use pattern on the lug bump for that corner, and we would probably recommend to you at some point that if this actually, when we review the plan every year, that we may want to expand that mixed-use node, so we don't necessarily mean just low-density residential.
Okay.
So we didn't think this amounted to, quite honestly, if we're recommending disapproval, but ultimately this should go forward in some form, there probably should be an update to the plan, to the land use part of the plan. And we discussed that in-house, to whether that comes back now or comes back at the end of the year when we do our review. And we thought this was of the variety that could come back after you deliberate this zoning case, and this could come back at the end of the year when we do an update after you go through your deliberations here.
So definitely probably advisable to update the plan and set the standards first.
Yeah, and that's, we recognize it, again, that these are broad strokes that we're taking when we color those colors on the plan, and it's not site-specific, which is why you have a zoning case that is site-specific, so we can't, the plan is not a zoning map, it is a general plan, and so I think the expectation is if we go through this and we collectively come out of this thinking, yes, residential, non-residential is appropriate, then I would recommend a change to that plan.
Thank you.
Are there further questions from the commissioners? I have a couple then. I note the property has been vacant for 20 years. Is staff, I know you're newer, but is staff aware of any prior attempts to develop this? Plans? Has the land changed hands and denied other permits?
Actually, Commission Chair, there was a past application for a planned unit development submitted in 2005, I believe, but it was withdrawn by the applicant.
Do you recall the use that it would have been put to at that time?
I do. I'm the old guy here. Yes, that was Commissioner Kanar. That was a combination of duplexes, triplexes, and office.
Thank you. Additionally, I'm just looking at the standards from the Golden Rule here, and when I read the analysis, we look at the relative gain to the public health, safety, and welfare. There seemed to be a fair amount written there as to what the detriment was, but certainly a project brings something to the table, and I didn't see that really in our write-up. I understand staff was recommending disapproval, but, you know, I don't know, should we not have seen some economic benefit or analysis here to indicate what this was bringing in to offset the damage perceived to the area?
Yes, Chairman Kanar, I think there's the balancing of those comments could come across as just being one-sided. I would agree. There obviously, like I said, there's a two kind of prong test here for our lug bump, and it's certainly the investment is something we look forward to and want. And then so that I believe was addressed under the comprehensive plan side of things, but yes, I would agree. Yeah.
There's no further questions from Ms. Nunabel at this time. We will go to the applicant presentation.
I'm going to try to be brief. I got a fellow that really knows what he's doing. First off, I'm Frank Mead. And first off, I'd like to thank the planning department. This was a rough one because it's a moving target. A lot of things came up, a lot of changes were made, believe me. They did a great job on it, no complaints at all, believe me. We basically were here because we ran out of time to go back and try it one more time to work out the details. It's stretched out now for months and months, and we've just got to cut it. Got to cut the work. That's all it is. Now, to answer the question on commercial in there, we were told no. Reason is 29th Street wouldn't handle the traffic, Wittenberg wouldn't handle the traffic. The changes to 29th Street, you'll notice where our entrance is way on the east side. It still has a big problem coming in there. The county agrees that 29th should not handle traffic that close to the intersection to Wittenberg of any volume at all. One of the reasons we selected these items, specifically these items, were extremely low traffic for both of them. That was to match the parameters that we were given to begin with. So hopefully that answers your question. From our standpoint, at least from what we were told, commercial is out of the question on that corner due to the traffic considerations on Wittenberg and still on 29th even after it's widened. That's my understanding. Well, you know, I drive by that sign every day. It says for sale. And it's been for sale for a while. And I know East Topeka doesn't have any good office space, to be honest with you, out where we're at. There isn't anything that's any good. I've handled up to 60,000 square feet of office space before. So I thought, we need some office space out here. Let's see how it flies. Now, I don't know if it will or not, but we've had good response on it so far, and I think it'll work. We're committed to build a building out there for offices. The second thing is storage. Well, I own 5 storage locations, so we're familiar with it. There's virtually no boat or RV storage in this area, virtually none. Storage by the lake makes the lake more attractive. It makes it more active. We've done this down at Clinton, and it's worked well for us, and it's worked well for the lake. We're right at the entrance to Clinton Lake down there, and everybody's happy with the results. More activity, and more people store their boats and stuff there. So from that standpoint, it's good. Also, in the surrounding area, there's many boats, there's RVs and campers up in people's yards. Now, we all know that's against the mobile home regulations. That's okay. They haven't got anywhere to put them. We're trying to provide these people an opportunity to make their neighborhood look better. There's also lots of boats, trailers, stuff like that. These things downgrade a neighborhood. Basically, if your neighbor's got stuff in his front yard, it's junk. I don't care what he paid for it. It may be expensive. You may have paid a fortune for it, but your neighbor's going to think it's junk because it's in your front yard, it's blocking the views, it messes up the neighborhood. So we're trying to provide something to help the neighborhood. Now, what we did, we developed an initial plan. We selected a few people from the neighborhood to look at it. And I was asked, would it improve the neighborhood? And I had to look at the guy, and I wasn't able to honestly say yes. It hurt me to do that. You know, I've lived around this lake my entire life. My grandfather worked on the building of this lake. We threw that plan away. We came out with another one. We threw that one away. We threw it again and again. And planning can testify, we put them through a lot to make it better. I'm proud of the plan we have now. I think it's going to accomplish the things we want to. We're going to bring offices in. In the first phase, we're building office buildings, and I feel confident enough in the response that we've had so far that I'm going to put an office into the second phase of this too. I feel confident it will happen, it will work. It does lift the neighborhood. It provides offices and stuff for the people there. It provides a border between the commercial. You've got something like 6 or 8 acres of commercial right just to the west of us, right there. We're providing a buffer between that and the residential. You'll notice that around us, we're fully covered with trees. We made a big effort to only minimally damage those trees as little as we possibly could to save that ring around us, to give us the buffer between us and the houses. We don't want them to see us. We don't want to see them. That's the way we want it to be. And then the offices in front. Basically, what we've done is tried to make, and I think we've been pretty successful, to make the storage virtually invisible. We think the area needs it. We think the area should have it. But we don't think it should be an eyesore. We think it should be virtually invisible to the people of that area. And that's what we worked at by putting the offices in front of it, putting the trees around it, all that stuff. And you'll see from my friend here, our architect, what efforts we've gone to make this thing blend in to the area. Well, I've taken up more time than I told him I would. And keep in mind, if not this, what are you going to put there? It's in the city. It's to be developed. There's a for sale sign on it. Somebody's going to put something there. If not this, what?
That's good. C.L. Maurer with Landline Engineering out of Lawrence. I've been working with Frank almost 6 months now trying to come up with this. And you can see it's this Lake Shawnee storage facility. And you can kind of see in the background, this is a quick rendering we did of it just for the first rendition. Let me talk about the site a little bit. When we did the 10 acres, we specifically stayed out of your creek setback that you have around that creek to the north. Our property doesn't even get close to that. We're outside that, so we don't have to deal with that at all. And it's a big deal. The last one that he was talking about earlier, the plat that never got filed, that was 150 foot wide. You can see the dashed lines on the other side of it. That's the other side of that. That's how wide a buffer that will be, whatever that develops to. I mean, yeah, Frank bought it all. It'll probably be residential, but that buffer is going to be there. It's 150 to 200 foot wide from what will be the storage facilities. To the east, the low trees there, you see that dark black line? That's a retaining wall that we wanted to make sure we built along there so that we didn't disturb those trees. And that can be somewhere between 8 to 10 feet, something like that. But those trees fed. So those existing trees are going to be there. The planning staff also asked us to provide some more evergreens on that side. We've done that as part of the 17 comments that he came up with. The other thing came out of the county, which he didn't discuss, was 29th Street. They asked for an additional 20-foot of right-of-way from us. They already have 50. They asked for another 20, so they have 70-foot of right-of-way, plus an additional 20-foot come out of planning staff for additional green space. That is not even close to what you have in front of Sonic and the ones up the street. This is even more than that. So buffering-wise, from 29th Street, we can add berms along there. Grading's not part of this package, but we can put berms along that area, and that will get rid of a lot of the sight of cars or something as you drive down through there. So you're not going to see the offices as much because we can't put berms and landscaping. There's also a sidewalk was commented about that they wanted. Sidewalks can be provided. The county didn't want us to place a sidewalk along 29th or along Wittenberg because it's in a ditch. So it's a catch-22. I'm not sure how we're going to solve that problem, but we've shown a sidewalk along there. It might be right on the property line, or it might be in a utility easement. There's a 20-foot utility easement along Wittenberg, so we step back from that. So these aren't right on the property line. Everybody keeps talking about how, well, what they're going to look like and what's going to be there. A lot of your storage facilities around Topeka, they're right on, there's no green space between your right-of-way line and development. I mean, there is no green space. This one provided that green space. The biggest issue on this is the report was done a year ago. Item J. You guys look at that. It says DWR classifies this dam as a size 4, Class C, high hazard dam. High hazard. Now, on your long-range plan, you've asked to put residences below this. This is a high hazard dam. I don't believe that I can get DWR to ever sign off or find an insurance company that'll ever insure a house. Now, I know that's what the long-range plan says, but I don't think anybody here can pay for the insurance for that. And then for an office or for a storage facility, that's a different animal. Yeah, he'll just pay some sort of insurance. I'm not saying getting out of it, but it's not live. An office is there from 8 to 5. You're going to get notified that the dam is failing. Don't go there. Now, I understand the guy that coaches at the bar in Kansas City, yeah, he was not the brightest person in the world. There's no way he should have ever gone in that building, but he did, and so they had to save him. That's a specific, I mean, I can't help that. But we can say, you know, this office use from a high hazard dam and a storage facility, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, yeah, the dam blows, you lose that building. Losing buildings is trivial to losing life. Like I said, the right-of-way, there's a blow up of that. We're talking about that. We're set back more on this development than what we are up the street at 29, or even what you have at Dillon's or at McDonald's on the other side of 29. We have more setback on it, more green space. And we provided the trees they requested and along there. He talked about the rendering we provided. We provided this rendering to him of what we think the storage facility would look like. Now, it's not a flat wall. It's a low, one-story shed roof. We've kicked around back and forth. There might end up with solar panels on these roofs. It's a perfect opportunity for them. They're flat, and it works great. I have one. I installed one a year ago, and I'm happy to say I've got one. But that's the long Wittenberg. That's what you'd see along there. Well, whether it's a yellow color, I mean, that's part of the negotiating of what color these things. We put earth tones on there. Offices. This is a rendering that we provided that we said the offices might look like this. So it's got parking and sidewalks, and it's whether it be brick or whether it be some sort of architectural panel, either one. I mean, it can be something along those lines. This is a quote that came out of there, and I'm trying to figure out, and it comes back to that high hazard dam where this is zoned R1. We understand that. But that high hazard dam, this should never have been zoned R1. That part of it, I don't follow. And they also talk about, in the paragraph after this, they talk about institutional uses. And I don't know what the difference to an institutional uses and an I-1, I mean, I don't see the difference there. Still industrial use. You put a school there, schools are not great neighbors, their activities go all the time, but once again, I'm not sure we could put a school in the high hazard damn area. I don't think I'd want to take my kids. Now, if you want to put public works down in there, something like that, and that makes sense, but the public works is not going to look any better than what a storage facility looks like. And then the other thing was, topographically, this land is lower than any of the sanitary sewer lines around. Sanitary sewer line was built for the residences around on the top side of the buildings, or on the top of that grade. We have to provide a small pump station that he's willing to, or a private pump station, and then pump all our sewage up to that elevation. I think that's part of why that development never came to commission, is when they found out they had to put a pump station down there by that creek. Well, you're talking a couple $100,000. The number of that acreage did not ever pencil out for that kind of stuff. Offices is different. The offices area, you're not going to have as much toilet fixtures. And storage, you're not going to have a toilet fixture in that thing. So for this land use, when it comes to sanitary sewers, it's better, because you're not going to have all that influx of sewers. So you can have a small pump station out there. It can be private, which the Public Works said was fine with them. They didn't have any problem with privates. It's up to him to maintain it, and then we go up to enforcement. So going through the staff conditions, we provided on this last 17, what you see in red, we made those changes to the plan. The only thing we didn't make a change to was number 10, where it was asked to flip the buildings. And that was asked to flip the buildings from the right along the self-storage to the front and put the parking in between those two. With the idea that we're set back so far, we can berm it and do the same thing. So that visibility of the offices, at least they can see signage. And I've done that for Walmarts, where you only see the sign and you don't see the parking lot. You go to 31st and Iowa and Lawrence sometime, you drive down to Iowa Street and come up, 33rd or 31st, you sit there at the intersection, you only see the sign of Walmart. You don't see the 1,000-car parking lot in between. So it can be done, and it can be done just by that little bit of work. You can make it look nice and not be such an invisible impact. And like I said, we're saving all the trees to the east, and that's for that reason. We didn't want to have all these things being seen from the residents. So we can go through all 17 if you guys want me to, but basically everything we've updated these things based on these comments. And there was an aerial of this was before we moved the driveway. We moved this driveway a little bit farther to the west where the existing whistle is now. Today, that's where the county asked us to do it. That came from the county directly. So that, and the slope over there is so bad. But granted, this was before we started with the elevations and stuff, and we just left it that way. But visually, I don't think you're going to see, this is from a bird's eye view, not from down the street. I'm open to any questions, concerns?
Mr. Armstrong?
Thank you. Could you, I'm still unsure on parking. This elevation in our handout shows parking adjacent to 29th Street before I get to the office. Were you just stating that parking isn't in between those two and it's back behind?
That's what the planning commission, I mean, that's what the planning staff asked us to take these buildings and move them to the front and put the parking in the back. That was the one condition that we just were uncomfortable doing. We did move the buildings back. Can I go back on this? How do I go back? There we go.
There you go.
One of the conditions was in that they have an extra 20 foot between the storage facility and the back of the offices. and then provide a row of shrubs and some evergreens to block that view, which we could do that as we do, and that's all based on the phasing. Because they were trying to screen, even though these are one-story buildings, they were trying to screen that as much as possible. And we also said, we can make that look the same as we did at Wittenberg. We can put false doors, false windows, and make that look like an office if all the offices don't go in front. So we can beautify this thing in different manners and different ways.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Ha?
can you tell me approximately the differential in elevation between your site and the residential area to the east?
Yes. I think it shows up on that. $950 is the elevation, or $955 is the elevation of the residences. And we're sitting somewhere around $930, roughly.
Okay. And as far as your site lighting, there was a mention in the staff report about providing lighting that does not interrupt or bother the neighborhood adjacent. And with that differential, how high approximately would your pole lighting? Are you using lighting on the buildings, or?
Pole lighting wouldn't be in the storage. It would just be a pack light, and they could be screened and shot down. Now, you might have pole lights on the offices just for security, but once again, you're talking a 25-foot pole, and you can still put shades around those to glare, and that's simple to do. I mean, when they put the fixture up there, they put a shade, and then that way you don't look right into that light. And that's a number one problem when you get a 30-foot light and walk up to it, you're seeing right at that. So you can shade that.
And so your facility is roughly 25 feet lower than the adjacent property, and okay.
That's why the drive to the far east was moved where it is today, or where on this plan up here, I think you're moved farther to the west, because the elevation change was so great there that the county didn't know if they could make up the difference there.
Commissioners, any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Gale.
I had written down a note when you were talking earlier, and if I misunderstood you, is the expectation that from the street that you're trying to give the feel of this being an office park, despite the other uses? Or I guess what I was trying to get is an understanding of what is the what is the passerby or someone walking on the sidewalk? What is the expectation of the neighborhood's impression if they don't ever use the facility other than to drive by it? What is the expectation?
I would say more like an office park.
Okay.
I mean, we don't have all of the green space you could have in an office park, but I think you're correct on that.
Okay.
Because it's a linear and doesn't have a pocket as you would have like a pocket.
So a couple of my questions are kind of based off of that a little bit. I didn't see the previous rendering before I came in here, and it's the aerial bird's eye that shows all the buildings. And part of my concern, and then I kind of went back and I remembered in the analysis there were some percentages. We only show 16% of the site is technically for office use. 29% is considered heavy commercial, which is C4, and that's actually the internal pedestrian storage, and then 55% is the gross building area used for I-Light, which is industrial. While that didn't initially bother me, because if you have a big enough site, you can kind of hide some of those things, but when I saw this view here, the thing that concerned me is the description. And again, I may have misunderstood you, but I heard the word office park perception, but this doesn't feel like an office park. This feels like an industrial park because of the density of buildings. If it were from the street to feel more office park, it would have a little bit of the linear part of the front would be, have a little more movement to it, or a little different change in the character of each of the buildings, or you wouldn't necessarily just have this maximum density. That's the impression I get when I look at this, which is what I saw on the plan. It's like you took every space you could possibly take that you didn't need to have vehicle access, and you built a building on it, which concerns me when we're going from residential then to something that it's, and I don't disagree with anything you said about this is probably not the best place to build houses. I'm not sure it's the best place to build anything, but that's a different conversation. The city says we can build there. Now, whether or not your insurance company will let you do it, that's a whole other thing. But my point I'm trying to get at here is I'm stepping back and I'm thinking we've gone down a path here and proposing something, but my anxiety in doing that is it is so far removed from the adjacent zoning, which is something we always kind of factor in. What are we stepping up from? It's one thing to step up from residential to O&I 1 or 2 or to C2, which is pedestrian. It's neighborhood-esque. I can walk down and buy an ice cream cone, or I can go around the corner and see the dentist. Those are things that I'm okay with, hopping in the minivan or walking down the street and doing with my friends. But when you see then the density done like this in a kind of an out of place way, that's the feel I'm getting when I see it in context with the residential, even from that photo. I would be open to the idea if it was half as dense and there was more green space and a little more area in it. The thing that I'm concerned is it is maximum density that we can get on one level, as opposed to concentrated with more green space or something, which I know doesn't become suitable for storage capacity, but is maybe more for office use or something else. So that's my question is that I'm not sure that I could comfortably take the description of this as a office park setting, which is something you would normally see in a residential area.
Correct, yeah. I mean, what we don't know is the market. And that's kind of, I know we've got phases on here, but we don't know what's going to happen after phase 1. I know he says he's got more offices encouragement than he does. And that's where, I don't know either. And I understand what you're saying on that part of it.
Right.
I can't reassure you, storages and green space just don't go together just because of the way you
don't disagree.
Drive around it.
Don't disagree.
So I don't know how to, other than what we've tried to do with eliminating, keeping the trees to where they were today and going back that way.
So,
go ahead.
Okay, so another question I have for you, and unless you want to finish your thought there, or unless Mr. Mead wants to interject. Please do. Please do.
Keep in mind, it's over 20 acres, and you're talking 7 or 8 acres. So you want green space? There is green space. That goes back, the residential section, it's going to be really tough to use that because that dam, with that high hazard, it's going to be tough to use that space behind it. So we're talking a total of 20-some acres, and we're only using the front small section of it. There's a lot of green space. And even if one of these buildings protrudes out from behind the offices, they will also look like offices. You saw that earlier picture? We also have the same thing to go on these buildings here. The doors will look like office doors. The windows, they will have windows and everything, so they will even look like they're part of the offices complex. I appreciate their height, but if you can't see in, you can't see all that tightness behind them.
I think we're developing 10 acres, right?
10 acres of PUD, the other 10 acres is R1.
Floodplain.
Well, no, it's everything in the back. This is a total of 20 acres that he purchased.
But the developable lot is 10 acres.
10 acres is what we're looking at.
Right, but the balance of it is floodplain.
No.
Maybe I've been looking at it wrong here. Okay. So the other question I had is you had stated something about the right-of-way widths here. But I'm assuming you were stating it in the context that you're accepting those widths, but I want to be clear, it's only 2 lanes of traffic right here, right?
Today.
Today, okay.
By
Yet-
2019, they went 5.
Okay, which is what is just to the east, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so, which would allow for turning lanes and other things based on traffic down through that area? Okay,
That was the reason they asked us to move this, where we'd shown this driveway. The county asked us to move it farther to the west.
okay,
And they were planning on in their plans, they said, we'll provide a right turn lane to get into this development.
so you,
I don't know if that's going to be true or not. We'll see when that, I mean, that's down the road. They haven't started this.
okay, so help me, if the requested right-of-way is more generous than you normally would work, if you were designing that right-of-way from scratch, accounting for the fact that it has to be 5 lanes of traffic plus a buffer plus then the property line, what would you recommend to a city governing body that their right-of-way width be for that type of environment in a similar setting?
Oh, I mean, the 70 foot, that'd be, yeah, it would be that. It'd be
Okay.
70 or 75 foot. That's not.
Okay, I misunderstood. I got the impression that you felt that was more of a taking than you would normally design, and the example was just up the street, they weren't using a similar
Right, well,
right-of-way.
they did. I mean, up the street, they did. I mean, everything east of us, the residential and all that,
Okay,
that's there now today,
it's
they're gonna
less
get a
than
knock-
that.
they're going to be able to knock on the door and ask for how much
Sure.
right away.
It happens. I've
Yeah.
seen it all over Topeka, but
Yeah, it's a new standard.
understood, yeah.
It used to be just 100 foot for a lot of the
Okay.
arterial streets and all that, and now everything's gone to 150. A lot
Okay,
of
so
times.
for clarification, it is considered to be a best practice?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, that's not
That
a
helps me
problem.
out.
It hit us after we submitted our plans.
Okay.
And then after everything, so we had everything shrunk, or had to shrink down to make that work. We didn't
Okay.
know it going into it. We knew it after we submitted.
Okay.
And the planning staff didn't even understand that was going to happen. The communication between the county and is not, let's say, open.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to throw anybody in a bus. They just, one side doesn't know what the other is doing every day. And it's typical in every town.
All right.
Things happen, things go wrong, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions, commissioners? I do have one additional question. It was mentioned, and I know you said there was more interest maybe in the office space than some of the storage, but you know, we're right by a lake, usage of the lake, and nothing in phase 1 through 3 for the boat storage or RV storage. Is that not what I understand from the report? That seemed a little strange to me.
Yeah, unless those, I'm not sure how those roads are built. I mean, I understand what your question is, but I'm not sure how.
What we start with phase 1 is a very minimal thing. The boat and RV storages are the ones to the back. They use up enormous amounts of land because you got to have 60 foot to turn those trailers and stuff around in on each side of the thing. So they end up, we're talking about acreage. A lot of that is to turn those boats and RVs around. They're at the back sections back here. If, for any reason, climate control is not successful, those buildings can also be converted to boat and RV storage. That's a marketing question, but physically the buildings are very similar. So that there will be, it's just a question of what the market is on those. I'd like it to be climate controlled. We've got a climate control facility good in at Kmart. Maybe it won't be. Maybe we'll increase the number of boat and RVs. These are marketing questions that are hard to answer until you're in the market. That's the best I can tell you on that. The initial piece there is what we have to do to get the thing off the ground. We've got to have the pumps, we've got to have that office building, we've got to have those things. That's step 1, just to get it off the ground. And hopefully we move on from there. I hope we won't be disappointed. I still believe there's a market out there for that. Clinton, we have, in 3 years, we've doubled our capacity at Clinton and in the boats and RVs. We have literally doubled it by cleaning up the area, by taking out all the, as much as we can. It's still a fight to get the weeds out of there, but anyway, the areas, and we're handling twice the volume we handled before, and that means there's many more people going to the lake. It's been successful down there. I'd like it to be successful here. We have open storage down there. We don't have open storage here. That does cause a little bit of a problem, and that makes these more expensive for the people who are going to rent them. But on the other hand, we made every effort to keep this looking as neat and clean as possible. We do, the open storage does have problems. They don't exist in this. Whatever because everything is going to be inside storage. And like I said, our objective is to make this invisible. Whitmer Road, you're going to have to be thinking you're looking at offices or housing on there. Over here, again, if our building sticks out beyond the offices, we do the same thing to it. The doors are going to be white. They're going to look like a house door. And we're going to have windows. Everything else that you don't expect to see in a storage facility you won't see. You do not see any roll-up doors. You go through the neighborhood around there, everybody's got a roll-up door. You won't see them. We're going to make them invisible. We're going to try to look better than the neighborhood does.
Yes, Mr.
I have a question. Was there ever any consideration, because of the density of the site, to look at either two-story office facilities and to limit or reduce the number of buildings on the site, and also on the climate-controlled area? Was that ever looked at as a possibility?
That was discussed, yes. I mean, it's one of those economics. I mean, one of those, that's what I would say. I mean, we have the parking for, we could go two-story office and have the parking for that.
Well, I'm suggesting limiting the number of buildings by going two-story on some of them. Just wondered if that was considered so it didn't feel so dense. I've been, my daughter has stored things when she was in college in a two-story climate-controlled building, and it looked very nice, and it fit the location where it was, and it might be able to free some of this area up for more green space, so doesn't look quite as dense as what you've got. So that was my question.
Yeah, anything's feasible. I'm not saying we're not going to rule anything out.
Commissioners, do we have any further questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much. This time then, we're open for public testimony, and would remind anybody that approaches, please state your name and your residence or your address, and direct all of your comments to the chair. Then you have 4 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Gunn, G-U-N-N, and my address is 3000 Southeast Pisces Avenue. I have one of the 4 properties that is directly adjacent to this planned development unit, or PUD. Sorry, I got the words messed up there. I wanted to state from the beginning that I'm an attorney, but I'm not here representing anybody. Though the comments that I will make tonight do echo those of a number of my neighbors and those people that live in the area, as evidenced by the public informational hearing that was held in last month. There's a couple specific issues that I want to bring up and some broader concerns that were echoed by my neighbors. Specific issues, the one that I hold primarily, and it's because I have an adjacent property, there are people that live in my home who are photosensitive, meaning that changes in light or constant light can affect mood, sleeping patterns, things of that nature. This project strongly concerns me, even though the applicant has stated that there will be low light. We've heard tonight that there's a possibility that there may be pole lights 20, 25 feet, whatever they may be. That would be about the same level as my home. There have been comments about the trees as a buffer between our property and this planned development. However, I can tell you that every one of those trees is deciduous, and during the winter time when there was no foliage on them, I can not only see people in their cars going down Wittenberg, I can see their faces, but also their headlights come into my home. I can see the lights from the gas station further to the west, as well as the roadhouse just to the north of that gas station, from my living room, from my bedroom window, through those trees. So I'm absolutely certain that at some point that will become an issue. I do state this specifically on the record because of the fact that there is a quiet enjoyment issue that could come into play. The tort case law out there specifically states that there needs to be some advance notice that this may be an issue, so this would be a time for me to put out there that this is advance notice. This may be an issue, and if it becomes a problem, there will be further remedies that I will have to seek. There is also property value concerns for not only myself, but the people that live around that project development. It would be industrial in nature, despite the office park, and that we assume would only lower the value of our home properties. Okay, so those are the specific issues. Broader issues, and it was stated in the report from the City Planning Office. It was the basis for a number of comments during the neighborhood information meeting, is that this particular project provides no commercial or any sort of benefit to the area that the residents of Aquarian Acres or other neighborhoods believe in. The general attitude of people that I have talked to in my neighborhood and that were at that informational meeting is we're not against commercial development in this part of the city, but it has to be commercial development that makes sense for this part of the city, and this particular project does not. It is not an anchor property. It will not spur other commercial development in the area. It will not attract other businesses to build nearby. It can have the effect of congesting traffic, and well, I understand that they intend on widening 29th to 5 lanes. Right now, it remains a 3-lane street and a 2-lane street on Wittenberg. Anybody who lives in that area who has come down Wittenberg at any time during the daytime trying to get onto 29th from Wittenberg can sit there for 10 minutes, 12 minutes, waiting for the cross traffic to stop so you can get on. There's no traffic light there, there's no roundabout there, and my understanding is neither one of those is included in this potential plan or are feasible at that place. Despite what was said here earlier by the applicant, there is vacant commercial space on both sides of the corner of 29th and Croco that can be used as office space, but remains vacant and has been at least for a year. A number of these phases during the neighborhood information meeting, I don't know if it was specifically said here, but a number of the phases of this project were incumbent upon things such as the road being widened to 5 lanes. If the county and city determine that that's not going to happen, but we have these buildings in place, do we have half of a project and then that's it? Then the rest of this land sits empty. That doesn't seem to me to be an appropriate use of this land. Now, comments that were just made, such as you're going to have a difficult time building residential here. You're going to have a hard time building commercial here. So why not this project? It's industrial. It can be here. We can have office space. Why not this? And again, I go back to the fact that this particular project does not fit what we have in terms of our neighborhood, the feel for our part of the city. I used to live on the west end at Huntoon and Fairlawn.
Thank you, Mr. Gunn. Do I have a motion for additional time?
Mr. Chair, I'd be open to it if I knew how much longer the individual wanted to speak.
Do you have an idea of how long you need, sir?
Another minute.
Another
I
minute?
can be concise.
I would move we gave him 1 minute. It was yellow, by the way.
Second.
That's it, yeah.
Yes.
Take a vote. Just voice vote. Aye.
Aye.
Right. Please continue.
Thank you. At this point, an empty field with hay bales in it is more attractive to the area than something as dense as what's being proposed here. It doesn't matter how nice you make the facades, we're still going to know what's there. This project doesn't immediately benefit the people that live there. The only way it would is if everyone in the neighborhood, in the area, took out a storage facility. But we all have homes to store things. So, again, not against commercial development in the area, but it has to make sense for who we are. We don't want to be the west side of town. We all live there, or in the case of myself, I'll speak specifically to that. My wife and I chose to move to that part of town because it was quieter, because it wasn't the rampant commercial development that we saw on the west side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gunn. Do any of the commissioners have questions? Yes, Commissioner Armstrong.
Do you pay any type of high hazard dam insurance with your residents below the dam?
To my knowledge, no.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner.
Mr. Gunn, if this site was developed commercially and had shops or other things that would be beneficial to your neighborhood, would you support that type of development?
I would reserve the right to take it on a case-by-case basis. And the lighting concerns that I gave at the beginning of my public comment would remain no matter what would be planned for that space. If I may, a little bit. There were suggestions in the city planner's office's comments, those 17 suggestions, that would seem to attempt to address that, one of them being evergreen growth, to try cover that, but unless they're planting from the beginning 10-foot evergreens, it's going to be a certain number of years before you have a tree tall enough to impede any sort of lighting concern that would come directly onto my property.
Okay.
Any further questions, Commissioners? Thank you, Mr. Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
My name is Michael Myers. I live at 2909 Southeast Virgo, which is directly adjacent to the property being purchased to the north. And I've been a resident at that address since 2001. Would like to basically cover a couple points that I noted that seems to be coming up, that all the surrounding residents on this property sit at a higher elevation. Mr. Gunn's residence is equal to the top of the dam. I would say all the other homes around that property are at a similar elevation. And so we do have a downward look on this. So when you're looking at the bird's eye view, that's very much what we're going to be seeing. And to Mr. Gunn's point, most of the trees are deciduous, and in the wintertime, we will have a direct line of sight on these properties. To that point, I did attend Mr. Mead's first meeting. He seems very willing to do what's aesthetically needed to make these buildings as pleasing to the surrounding community as possible. The facades I'm not so much concerned about with as much as the rooftops, and he went as far as wanting to maybe meet our needs as far as going to some type of green or something that would blend in. Not only impacts the surrounding residents, but as well as if you've ever walked the dam at Lake Shawnee you will also be impacted by the downward bird view of this property. That said, I hope that Mr. Mead does build this project, hopefully not in my backyard. I am also an RV owner. I will probably be a prospective tenant. However, this property will, once it's zoned industrial, as you know, 20 years down the road opens the door for many other things. That is a big concern of mine. Probably my biggest concern is potential outdoor storage of units. While I am a potential user, I do like his buildings where they are proposing inside storage of RVs. As all of us know, you drive by a storage unit that has outside storage, you see a lot of blue tarps, a lot of rotting fiberglass, and just negative visual impact, and nothing that belongs next to a residential neighborhood. There is a storage facility in this area. It's at the top of the hill above 21st and Wittenberg, mixed in with other industrial use. That's where an outdoor storage unit place belongs. I would ask that if you do vote in favor of this, you put strong prohibitions in on outdoor storage, as well as much more consideration to the traffic issue at Wittenberg and 29th. Having been a resident out there since 2001, I've seen the lake develop with its trails, with its ball diamonds, and with that, the traffic has just gone through the roof. And as Mr. Gunn said, you can sit at Wittenberg for 5 minutes trying to find a gap on the 29th. Imagine doing that with a 32-foot trailer behind you or a boat. It's just going to compound that issue when you have those type of units pulling out on the road. Hopefully we have a roundabout at that intersection at some time soon that would resolve that, but at a minimum there needs to be some type of traffic study to, I think, to address that further. Last but not least, if you do not approve this, I would encourage the commission to look at long-range planning and some type of potential green space buffer all the way down.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
Meyer.
for your time.
Commissioners, does anybody have any question for Mr. Myers?
I just need clarification. Where did you say you lived in context to the site?
I am north of the site.
North of it, up here?
Virgo runs parallel to the north boundary of the property being purchased. They are maintaining a R1 zone. My concern is once there's approval, it can expand into that mode.
Any other questions, Commissioners?
There it is, yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer.
All right, thank you.
Do we have any other members of the public who'd like to speak?
I've never done this before, so bear with me, please. My name is Karen Tardiff, Tardiff. I live at 3025 Southeast Virgo. If you look at the map and you go from Wittenberg up, I'm the 5th land plot in. So it's up in that grotto of trees. The trees, that area is a swampy, pond-filled, snake-infested area. We have deciduous trees and we have some cedar trees. I can see the lake and that in the winter, and I live up in that area. Things I wanted to address. That's a smaller lake. It's not Clinton, it's not Pomona, it's a small lake. You know, we're on the process of surrounding it with a lot of commercial up in the corner of 6th and Croco. I don't have a problem with it, except they're empty buildings. And, you know, you go out, it doesn't seem to have the atmosphere that you would want in a recreational area. Again, it was mentioned that there was a high hazard dam. By the way, we don't have high hazard insurance, we don't pay any. And so would you put your $80,000 RV in an area like that? Probably not. So that kind of concerns me as not a great argument there. There's I've had a lot of feedback from people that drive by that way. All have been horrified by the fact that a storage unit would be in there. I've just come from Kansas City, 135th and Black Bob Road. They built a big Menards area, building, store, whatever there. The back is all lumber with a huge, it's a nice wall with a metal roof. It looks kind of like a prison. It's facing neighborhoods that are $350,000, $400,000 houses. I mean, a lot than us. I'm sure that, and it's actually adjacent to 135th Street and all that commercial on there. This isn't even there. This doesn't even have any commercial around. It doesn't even fit the atmosphere. I just think it's not a great planning. Most people are horrified that it's going in. A lot of recommendations for a recreational area or a good restaurant or anything like that, which fits, I think, the council's comments on, a better use in a residential area. So I hope you, in your wisdom, make the right decision. I think it can be developed, but I don't really think this is the appropriate way to go. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Tardif. Does anybody have any questions for her before she goes? Seeing none, thank you very much. Do we have any other members of the public that wish to speak? All right. Then at this time, would close the public hearing and entertain discussion by the commissioners of the proposal. And perhaps some of the testimony might require some more questions towards staff. Anybody want to lead things off?
Mr. Chair, if I could help maybe respond to a couple of things just for accuracy standpoint that may.
Please do.
Just want to make sure. We did hear some comments about lighting, and I just want to make sure everyone and staff, please correct me. I believe the proposal does not permit pole lights, and that they have wall packs that go on the storage buildings. So if that's, if you can verify, clarify the lighting, please.
I'd like to verify, and believe me, they're photosensitive. You ought to see what happens when the baseball lights go on. It lights up the whole world. This little card here is exactly the same ones you use to get into your buildings. This is what you have to get in to get into the storage facilities and stuff. They're locked out and everything. Each door, our doors all have security codes on them and everything. Chances of somebody breaking in and stuff, they're risking an awful lot because there's a lot of, everything's alarmed, everything's taken care of. That means that lighting, the old-fashioned scare them off with the lights, is over. We have security systems now of the most advanced type. You come in, your license plate's recorded. You go out, we know about it. You can't get in without the cards. If you try to get into somebody else's door besides yours, we know about it. So the lighting is not what it was in the past. It will all be light packs. I believe we're using, I think they were around 25 and 35 watt LED light packs is what we're using. Very low intensity, spaced about 50 foot apart. So, yeah, there'll be light, but they'll be low, it'll be between the buildings, very little upward reflection. We've done our best to minimize it, plus they turn off at night. At late night, they turn off. We don't want to, there's no purpose in them. The security systems are far, far better.
Yes, please.
You're talking about the storage units. What about the offices and the parking in the front?
Office buildings generally aren't And I have to admit, we will probably have lights there fairly long. Again, they'll be using low-intensity lighting, the same LED. We don't use anything but that in nowadays. And they will be also light packs, probably in the category 25 to 35 watts, which, yes, they put out light, but they're, again, it's similar to what you have in your front yard. That's the type of lighting we're looking at. You know, if you have a, let's say, modestly bright porch light, that's what they'll be equivalent to. We feel it's better to have 2 or 3 small ones than one great big one, no towers, none of that stuff. It's not necessary, especially in the office park, because the activity should be very low at night.
So,
Yes.
just to clarify, so you mean like floodlights on the side of the building?
Yeah, they will be, you call them, I call them wall packs. They basically, they're plated on the top. The lenses are so the light only directs down. They're specifically designed for that purpose. They're downward facing. They're designed to operate at about 9 feet in height. This is about their optimum. And so they're not very far off the ground. Our buildings aren't that tall. Our buildings are very short. And that's something else you'll have is our exterior buildings are taller than our interior buildings. Again, trying to block off some of the view and make sure we block off as much light as possible. The exterior buildings, the climate controls are going to be higher, and the ones on Wittenberg is going to be higher than the standard building inside. Again, to help, those little things to help it as much as we can to reduce light. I have to admit there will be some lighting, but compared to the other things, it should be relatively small.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, a couple more things. There was a mention, I think, that right-of-way standard is 150 feet for arterials. That is actually 105 feet is the standard for arterials, and the county is asking for an additional 20 feet on this side of the road for a permanent construction easement, basically. So it wasn't 150, 105 is the standard.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question. So clarification, the county is asking on the city side an extra 20 feet?
Correct. That is correct. An extra 20 feet.
And in part, is that because of they want to minimize the improvements on the dam side of the road in lieu of putting them on? I guess I need clarification. Why are we, not that I want to work well with our neighbors, I guess, why are we giving up to 20 feet and not the county?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gales, I can respond because I talked with Mike Welch with the county, who wrote those comments. They didn't want to have to deal with a troublesome temporary access construction easement.
Okay.
Because they didn't want to have to go back and replace trees and everything else.
So that's easement, not necessarily right away.
It is right away.
It is right away.
It is right away. They just, it was mechanically, it was easier for them to do that than to try to later on ask for a construction easement.
Okay.
So this means they don't have to come back and ask for a construction easement. So that was the purpose of that.
Is that something that we should be expecting all development then along 29th to anticipate from this point forward?
I think they have an opportunity here because there's a subdivision plat in process.
Sure.
You know, when they have to acquire right-of-way to the east, it's a different ballgame altogether.
Well, there's property. I realize it's county area across the street to the west, but my expectation would be they'd apply the same rules into that. We could expect that.
I actually don't know the answer to that question, but you know, they'll be in a different position. They'll have to negotiate and compensate people for right-of-way rather than requiring dedication.
Fair enough. Thank you.
In addition, I just want to clarify the elevations that were shown tonight. Staff did not receive those in time to put that as part of the PUD or even present that to you in your packet. I'm not sure if that was clear or not. But I will agree with Mr. Mead. I think he's been very good to, as we try to pull the project in a certain direction, trying to get to that. And I think I could probably sum it up. You hit on it a little bit, Commissioner Gales, is although we're recommending this approval, our recommendation for continuance includes a lot of the conditions that they said they could meet. Those conditions are really you have to ask yourself, is this an office park with storage or a storage park with office? And is there a park at all? So those are sort of the things that we were approaching in our continual recommendations with conditions, is to get to an office park with some storage and have a park setting. We didn't quite get there. As he said, we kind of ran out of time. And so that's why we felt there was a honest attempt on their part, but also an honest recommendation on our part that we thought you should consider a continuance if you because we see no reason why they haven't been open to working on those more aesthetic qualities of the plan. It's the density that we didn't quite come back. They didn't come back with in time. So that's where our main objection or big picture objection would be to continuing this case.
Well, because, Mr. Chairman, since it's been brought up, may I inquire as to what was the deadline?
Commissioner Gales, there's many deadlines as we go through the process.
We have them every day. I know. I'm hoping this twice now we've heard that there was a deadline, and so that this had to be submitted because of a deadline.
Sure. There's obviously the original deadline when they apply. So there's the first deadline. Then there's comments made back to the applicant. So there is a chance to, and there's a neighborhood meeting. So there's a chance to revise. I would say probably 2 weeks to 10 days prior to the staff report going out, which is ultimately, if that doesn't come back, those are more or less the last changes we see. And so the deadline is up until the point where we have to prepare the staff report, which is 2 weeks before this meeting.
Okay,
so if you want to...
So if there's a date coming up that something happens, do they have to start from scratch again? I guess I'm confused here. I got the impression there was a window all this has to occur in, and part of that helps me with formulation of my perspective on this. There was a sense of urgency that they had to come before us to present this.
Yeah, I understand.
Because of a deadline. Okay. And I want to understand, you mentioned a deadline. I want to understand what was that deadline.
Gotcha. So at that point, which is about after they receive our comments back, we also made which is about 3 weeks ago, more or less, we also made the comment that we did think there was a lot of loose ends. We don't think we're going to fall favorably on the recommendation, but we think we can get there if we can continue this. And so the applicant had the choice to continue it at that time or not. They elected to tell us to keep it on the agenda. So we wrote the staff report reflecting that, the latest information that we had at the time. All that being said, some information that you saw tonight then came in after that staff report was written.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, further questions for staff? I don't know about anybody else. I wasn't able to read the red print on their response to 17 comments, but I was given to understand that they perhaps agreed to 16 of them, the lone exception being number 10. where the parking would be located. It was staff preference that it be located, we don't have it up on the board, but it was located in between the office space and the storage in their mock-up, and theirs remains, and that's the one area of disagreement. If what they said is correct, is that accurate? Like I said, I couldn't read the red print that they had, so I don't know if they've really completely responded to these 17 comments.
Chairman, to my knowledge, they've not submitted anything to staff indicating their agreement or disagreement with any of these conditions at this point.
Okay. If I might address the applicant, I just want to make sure those are undertakings that you're willing to do.
Yeah, and let me make it real clear on the running out of time. It has to do with a lot of things that they have no control over.
I understand. I just would just like to address just the conditions, not the timing. I think we've gone there. So your response, do they have your response to these 17 comments in hand?
I think he'll answer those better than me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I made the changes all except for that one item. And no, I didn't resubmit it back to them because we were coming to you guys, and it was like, are we going to pass or fail? So I made the changes with the thought if we do pass, I got them done. I explained it, just to have another, or whatever, I don't know what the next, I'm not familiar with the procedure.
I understand. I appreciate that. And my one thing I wanted, and it is comment number 10, that is in dispute with regard to the location of the parking.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, everything's done except for that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Hall?
Mr. Chairman, just want to, maybe you can address this or ask the applicant this. Condition 11 would require them to decrease the amount of storage, type 2 storage, by 2/3, 67%, which is a substantial change. Great if that's something they're willing to do, but just that should probably be verified because that's pretty significant.
I understand. That's exactly why I was asking my question, is to find out whether or not staff had had a chance to review.
And we have not.
The comments. Commissioners, we have further discussion here.
May I expand on that by addressing the
Please do, Mr. Gales.
Mr. Mead, I have a question for you. So it's on that point, item 11 talks about phase 1 reducing the 2/3 storage. I want to take it a little bit further than that. My hang up is the I-Light. My question is the I-Light doesn't even get developed till phase 4 or 5. I want to know how important that is to your business model, because if there's anything that's out of place here, it's that. Whereas you can look up and down 29th Street and there's O&I and C2 and C4, which have successfully and unsuccessfully, depending on who your property owner is and the business person, but it's still part of the environment and it's part of what we see in a residential zoning many times because it can be made very pedestrian. So the premise of my question is, how married are you to this I-Light? Because that seems to be prominent. It's a quarter of the site when you look at the RV space.
Well, one of the problems is we only, actually, it looks like we're using a large amount of land. When you're talking RVs and storage, we're talking RVs and stuff, they use up enormous amounts of land because of the turnaround space and stuff.
Understood.
So that is why it is there. As I said, we may come back and say, well, we didn't have climate control, but we can do. So there may be some changes in future depending on market, but the structure that you see here will probably stay. It would be extremely unusual to change the structure because, for instance, the climate control, as I said, if they don't operate, the new thing at Kmart does, these buildings will also could also function the same way with virtually no change that you can tell from the street side. So there are things in there. I wish we could put a lot more RVs and stuff in there, but we'd have to utilize a lot more land, and we just don't have it, because I want those office buildings out front to make sure that, in essence, we cover that. I promised the people that I'd have that business park out there to cover up the storage and stuff. And I don't, it may cost me, but I'd still like to leave it, I want to leave it there. I don't want to take, I live in this area, I live out there too. I don't want to take the storage all the way to the street. That's the last thing I want to do. So yeah, we're a little bit limited on what we can do with RVs. In Lawrence, we have an enormous amount of RVs and stuff down there on 20 acres. We just don't have the amount of land mass to work on this one. But yes, we're going to try to get them in as soon as we get stabilized and as soon as we get, let's see, it'll be the third set of buildings that go in, or the first ones that handle RVs. And it'll be the third set.
Okay, so
and that is what we think we're going to have a market for. Unfortunately, we have to progress out to there. There is the potential for interchanging the second and third. We'd have to go, make it clear, anything we want to change once this is passed, I've got to go back and ask these people's permission. We've got to get it done, and they can say yes or no. They say you stick to the plan, you stick to what you said. So when I say we've had the potential, it still has to have their approval for even the smallest changes once it's been approved.
Okay, so let me follow up to my initial question. I was wanting to hear how married you were to the inclusion of iLight, and what I'm hearing you say is it's critical to the long-term success of the site.
Well, first off, you view that as iLight. I don't. Well, in other areas, it is not. In other communities and other areas, it is not iLight.
So I'm going to interrupt you.
But
I can't use your perception in my review of the zoning, and because when I say iLight, then iLight can be what iLight wants to be.
No. You didn't hear me. I can't make one small change in that iLight without their permission. Everything has to go back there. It's a PUD, not an iLight. I can't override. I can't say I want to put industrial in there. These are the people who are going to tell me I'm wrong. I can or can't do it. I cannot go in there and put in something. I can't change one building. If I want to change the sequence of the buildings, I still have to get their permission. There isn't one thing I can do that's out there that they won't have control over.
So I can apply that same criteria that you just stated to me, the fact that the land is zoned R1. And I can't go change this from R1 without their permission. But here you are, seeking our permission to change it from R1.
That's what we'd have to do. We'd have to seek permission to get it done.
So having been on the plan, I'm going to interrupt you. So having been on the Planning Commission for 6 years, I know that things change. So it may be iLight for RV storage today, but it could be iLight for something else tomorrow if the Planning Commission agrees to it. So that's back to my original question was, how married are you to iLight? And I'm hearing you say indirectly is it's critical to the overall success of the lot.
There's two purposes there, office and storage.
Okay.
And we think the two of them will work together because, again, we're trying to make this somewhat invisible to the neighborhood, try to make it as much as we can. And these people have valid points. As much as we can, part of the neighborhood, part of the thing, for instance, you notice the back of the buildings face their houses. They don't get to see the lights. The lights point the other direction. The buildings block the lights from them and stuff. So we've made an effort to try to make sure that they run north-south instead of east-west. We've tried to put all those in there and tried to make it part as possible. And you've been here. It's hard sometimes to make things possible. I don't want to put up a wooden fence between me and them. I think those are some of the worst ideas. We've tried to let the foliage and the trees take care of it. And if you look at the elevations, these buildings, we're cutting the land down. The buildings go down. We're trying to stay out of the road, stay out of their vision as much as reasonably possible, trying to do this thing. And again, I know once they've changed the zoning, well, once it's PUD, they can come back and look at it again. But they'll be the people that make that decision, and these people can make comment on it if that happens. I can't visualize that happening. The only thing I do is storage. I do office and I do storage. Those are the things I do nowadays. I've given up my other hobbies. These are the ones I do nowadays.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gales. I understand your point. It's a lot easier to get a change from I-Light one purpose to another than it is to get it from R1 to I-Light. Would like to note that, we've had several people indicate that they, I'm very familiar with the kind of look that you're going to have down on this property. I went out and drove the neighborhood, and it's extremely similar to the look that I personally have from the back of my house down on Urish Road. And I know very much the difference between what it looks like in February and what it looks like in August. And they've done a lot of work on things for the site, but at some parts of the year, the people that are living in those residences facing it are going to have a look right down into it as they have a look out to the lake from the level that they're on. I've got a lot of thoughts personally about the development. I don't like seeing a lot that's been empty for 20 years, that's had one idea floated, and we get another one here and somebody standing willing to do it, and we tell them no. I'm not sure this is the perfect development for it, but I'm not sure there ever will be one. But I have an even bigger reticence that we have a list of recommendations if we were to move this for approval that's 17 long. The applicant has responded to them verbally to us tonight, but staff has had no time to put their expertise to use on whether or not they've actually responded to those, and we're left with the word. And while I have no reason to doubt it, I kind of think we have staff for a reason. Those are my thoughts. I don't know, commissioners, anybody else have comments they want to take before we start looking for motions here?
I'll speak up, Mr. Chairman. I do want to commend Mr. Mead and his team. I consider myself a business person, and I own real estate. And it's by nature, you're always trying to look for the best and highest use of your investment for a return on it. I also think there's a responsibility we have to make sure that we're leaving a place better than we found it. And that's the unmeasurable side. I think in this case, we're being asked to change this from the existing R1. And having lived in the town long enough and practiced long enough, that's not uncommon over here. This around the lake is growing, and it's more of a suburban/urban environment than it is a rural environment. So I think there are times and places where O&I and C2 and even some C4 can appropriately blend into residential areas. And I think that it's the burden is then on the developer to make sure that he's doing it in a way there's give and take, and that he leaves it a little bit better than he found it, and it becomes inviting and looks like it belongs in the neighborhood. And I'm the kind of person that wants to walk a couple blocks to an ice cream store. I want to walk, if I lived a couple blocks from the grocery store or something like that. So I'm open to all that kind of commercial and retail and office park setting. So heck, I work in the downtown. I like density. I'm that kind of guy. My challenge goes back to the fact that now we're pushing outside of that natural envelope that we would consider in allowing for industrial. Even though it's I-Light, we're allowing for it, and I have concerns about that. And I realize, again, and if it's so significant, then why wouldn't we be developing that first? It's not even being developed. So that's why I raised my question, is what's the importance of it if it's not the priority on the lot? I will, without showing my hand, I would tell you I'd be much more open to this development. I know the neighbors want it to be, a place where the geese can land and the deer can roam and somebody else can mow it, but land is there to be developed, and we are talking about Wittenberg and 29th, that at some point, this area is going to develop. It might be a gas station at some point, rightly or wrongly. It might be 5-10 years from now, but I see this area developing. There's a bar and a gas station, a rock's throw from there, and I could probably hit it with my arm for 20 years younger, but I can't now. But I have an issue with the industrial, and I think that's the point. That's the reason, the basis for my question is how important is that if that's not what we're developing first, and we're leaving it for future development. So anyway, those were the premise of my concerns.
Well, obviously, I shared the concern. I didn't put it in the detailed manner you did, but that we're identifying a spot by the lake for storage, and it's not in phases 1 through 3, struck me as just on its face as an inconsistency. I would like to ask you, just because we all heard, about their objection here in case people are looking at adopting this. The comment to number 10, or the dispute on number 10 with the parking location. We presently have a representation of compliance with the 17, or with 16 of the 17, but not with that, and that they would leave the parking on the street. Is that an item that you're very firm on? That we should be seeing compliance with the staff's comments, or one way or the other?
So I'll go back to the development that was allowed to occur at Aquarian Retail. And full disclosure, I was the architect and I did the master plan and the PUD on it. We worked, and this was a decade ago, so different time, different place, but similar challenges. We ringed the development with residential, and we created a park environment where there was a substantial amount of green space, buffers, and long-term plan for walkways around it that could interconnect with the neighborhood if they so desired. But all of our parking along 29th Street was on the front, which is traditional in a retail type setting. And as you went back where the offices were the next layer back, then the parking kind of was around the offices, but still in relative close proximity to the drives. So I realize these are offices. The challenge is they're laid out like a retail strip mall. So in my mind, that's when I saw the rendering. My first reaction is that's a retail strip mall, so that parking should be in the front. But that's not what it's being proposed as. It's being proposed as office, but it's still a retail environment. So I wouldn't move the parking to the back. I think we're setting it up, if we approved, C2 and O&I 1 or 2 for that'd be setting it up for failure to make them have to put the back of their building to the street and not have more of a commercial or a retail setting on a retail corner. It's probably not the best corner to build a residential on, but I'm not saying this is the answer, but I wouldn't necessarily agree. If I were representing them, and I'm not, and full disclosure, I have no intentions to, I would be fighting to keep that parking out front. So.
Thank you. Other commissioners' comments?
I was just going to say, I would agree. I thought the same thing. I wouldn't want to see the backs of the building facing 29th.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what I think would end up happening, so.
Okay. Does anybody have any further comment? Then I would entertain a motion. If people would like Mike Sfeeney sent out a wonderful list of the options earlier, if you'd like to review those for people, generally on, we've got approval, disapproval, or setting it aside.
Or a motion to continue to allow staff to possibly work with the applicant.
So I sit in the wonderful quandary of whatever motion I would make that would prolong it from tonight, I don't get to come back and deal with it. So it becomes somebody else's problem, which is the premise from my previous question, which is why I asked how married are we to that. It's on that note, I think I should, for the moment, refrain from making the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make the motion that we take give the option to delay till next time to continue this discussion, and after staff has had a chance to review information, the new information presented.
And just for clarification, is your motion to continue it till our next scheduled hearing, or to set a different time in between?
I would say to our next scheduled meeting.
Right. We have a motion to continue this to the next scheduled meeting. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Armstrong.
So maybe clarification from staff. What then does that narrow your window to get an official response, review, and be able to then start preparing? Did I hear you say it's a 2 to 3 week window to start putting this packet together? You have to have a decision before then. So are we narrowing all this to a 1 week window for you guys to work with the applicant?
Commissioner Armstrong, the calendar is also working against us. This is a late Planning Commission month, and next month is an early Planning Commission hearing, so we probably lose a week, even if we had some time. So I would defer to Mr. Hall in terms of the actual window that we have.
I think the situation would be that we'd get revised plans. We would not have the time to make comments and then get another set of revised plans, which I think is okay. If I understand their response correctly. So if we were able to get this revised set of plans, at the latest, I'd say by Thursday, that would give us an opportunity to review it and put together a recommendation and then that would go out in the packet. The packet's scheduled to go out on the 8th of September. So, and generally we want to be able to complete a final draft or a draft of our report probably by the 1st of September, and I think that it'd be in the form of a memo at this point. Memorandum instead of a full staff report. It'd be a memorandum on the cover of this staff report.
Well, based on that, we also have to have the sidewalk issue dealt with the county. I don't know that leaves us time to really address these issues. So I would, that's a corner that I don't want to back into if we don't have to.
For clarification, if we move to continue it and it's not ready to go, does it move on to the next calendar, or do we have to hear it at the next meeting?
No, you don't need to hear it at the next meeting. It could be at the October meeting.
I know that the applicant doesn't want to go there. I'm just wanting to make sure we understand what happens if we vote one way or the other.
Another concern, Mr. Chair, is notification of the neighborhood and the public as to what is actually being proposed. They know one thing has been proposed, so I want to do this right. You really need to build some time in there so they know what's the change, what is the new plan before it comes to you. So that's my recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to amend my motion to fit the schedule of the staff. if October is a better date, then I'm willing to amend my motion accordingly.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing from staff?
I think that should be fine.
All right, Mr. Hoff, you'd like to amend that?
Yes.
Okay, so we have an amended motion to continue this to the October meeting.
Second.
And it's seconded. Chris, if you'd like to call the vote.
You want to make sure there's any discussion? Last discussion.
Nobody jumped in last time, so I was guessing there was none. Please.
Mr. Chair, I'll make one. I just, at this time, I do feel too conflicted that I wouldn't even know what motion I would like to personally put forward, so I think more time would be better.
Okay. Anyone else?
I would agree. I actually was thinking about offering a motion maybe to do effectively the same thing, to deny this without prejudice, where they could be encouraged to come back. But I like this route a lot better. I don't just say that because I won't be here in a month when it's time for them to, a couple months when it's time for them to consider this. But it sounds like there is a lot more work and review that needs to happen, and almost sounds like another community meeting is definitely a necessary step. So providing the community with additional information and giving our staff time, I am 100% comfortable with pushing this back to fit the calendar of the staff.
Right. Anyone else? Chris, please call for the vote.
Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Ms. Messina?
Aye.
Ms. Cavazos? Aye. Mr. Gales?
Aye.
Mr. Hoff?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan? Aye. Mr. Kennard?
Aye.
Ms. Ringler? Aye. And Mr. Woods?
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
All right, that's the only item that we have on the agenda for the night. Mr. Gales, Mr. Woods, thank you very much for your participation and all of your service.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to move that we bring up the unresolved flag and banner issue, unless that's wanted to be tabled to a further meeting, but I was hoping we could stay and debate it till an answer was, but seeing a lack of interest, I'll waive my motion.
He's pretty funny.
All right, well, if nobody has anything else, move that we are adjourned.
Second one.
Aye.
What are we going to do without you?